Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're going to be finishing up a fan with too much time Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40k, Episode 11, The Republic Strikes Back. Last time around, the clone troopers surprisingly are a really great matchup for the General Imperium army. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see that even though there's normally a tech mismatch, this one is actually really well done because las guns are something the clones are actually really good against because their armor is really good at negating a couple shots. And by a couple, I mean whatever they only have to block once. That said, every piece of their armor can always block a shot once, unless it's something explodey. So I'm just like, oh, dude, this is a really cool interaction. Basically what I'm saying is I'm geeking out, I'm excited to see what happens, and I just want to move into this, so we will. You guys know the deal, though. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. Already done. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and tell me what I missed because I'm me. I do that. And I actually appreciate when people let me know because it's really cool to just check out the comments. So let's get started. Meanwhile, within Admiral Trench's flagship... I don't know what voice I was using there. Huh. I kind of liked it, though. It's stupid to say. Fun.
Rex grit his teeth.
Oh, we're jumping right back into Rex.
Down as he crouched behind the stack of thick Durasteel crates, pistols out and in each hand. He and Ahsoka had split up with the intention of dividing the enemy's attention. And it seemed to have worked, though he now found himself held up from their rendezvous point. It was these new forms of Imperials. Rex had faced a Space Marine, and he had been briefed by his brothers in the 501st about the Imperial Guard.
So what are they fighting then?
But these things
Army?
were neither. Robed in red...
Oh! So this I've actually been really looking forward to. I knew that they were in this episode because they were in the freaking thumbnail. But we get to see a human clone-ish perspective on the abomination of cybernetics that is the mechanicus. Oh, dude, I just want to hear the sheer horror. Because, like, they do this to themselves. They might have already had an idea of this because not so much Rex, but the other clones have probably passed on the information about the brother, the tech marine they encountered. Even that is probably less of a what the encounter than this is. Oh, dude.
Wielding bizarre and powerful weapons.
Sounds about right.
More machine than men. These combatants were of a whole different
This
breed.
is literally the kind of
Rex
horror
that
happened in Yuuzhan Vong War with the biological replacements.
The dumb, lumbering kind, which, though being far more heavily armed than most things the Confederacy ever bothered deploying, were just as slow and easy to outmaneuver as any B-1s.
Yeah, that's why on the
And
game
the
they're pretty
smart,
bad.
faster kind,
These ones
which
are
wore
annoying.
the red robes and behaved more like commando droids, though their precision and teamwork were on a whole different level.
Okay, real talk for a second. While he's making a very accurate assessment and does perfectly match exactly how Skitarii work, I'm assuming he's talking about Skitarii both between the picture and that kind of being how Skitarii are, basically heavy, teamwork-focused commandos. The fact that he just compared Skitarii, who technically are still human and not AI machines and robots, to droids is literally probably the sickest burn in this entire thing right now, because if he said this out loud, this would be the most damning insult they could receive. And he literally isn't going to say it out loud because, well, I speak to the enemy. I wish he would, because that is literally rage-inducing. And I would love that. I mean, that's even if they bother to listen, and there's an entirely good chance they're just going to ignore them. But still... the comparison to droids is probably going to get someone upset, and I really want to see that. That's almost as much as this.
Even now, one of the big lumbering ones was positioned at the end of this hallway, using an enormous heavy weapon to keep the heads of him and his men down, and popping any who dare.
I know that this is just a heavy weapon on one of the lobotomized, let's go with tech platforms. Is that a heavy bolter? Dude, compared to a normal human, that's actually rather large. I'm usually seeing it in Space Marine size, so it doesn't look as big by comparison, but damn. Really cool. And, you know, disturbing because you can kind of just see the stitched shut mouth. Yeah, this is one of the more disturbing parts of the entire faction, but not the most disturbing.
Dared rise. Meanwhile, the robed warriors crouched on mechanical limbs, eyes glowing as they sighted down their bizarre weapons. Yeah. As if to remind him of their presence, they fired again. "Get down!" Rex yelled. While the lumbering
these guys
ones
are probably a
sprayed
lot harder
weapons
to
fire
fight
everywhere
against
without
than
care for
army.
accuracy, the robed ones never took shots that didn't at least come deathly close to striking home. He watched two troopers near him who had been, so far as he could tell, safely behind cover as the shots ricocheted off the nearby walls, striking one clone in the stomach and the other in the shin.
Oh, this. I know it's not what Fan was intending, but I find this is an absolutely hilarious parallel to something that's a tabletop mechanic. In the game, if you can see one person, and an entire unit, you can get shots off on everyone. And he just gave it a narrative reasoning because these are so precise and their augments are so crazy accurate at some precision level that they can bounce their bullets. Because we don't need to see everyone, we just need to see a general idea and then we can do the rest. Is that what he's going for? No. But as someone who's had to deal with Martian shooting and is like, okay, I make one person visible and then the entire squad's done because they keep rolling 6 and I keep rolling 1s, and I'm going to take it. It's amusing to me.
The effect was the same. They screamed as electricity coursed through them, silencing as they went rigid still, Rex turning away as their struck body parts.
And that's showing that this type of mechanicus not bolter. I actually don't remember what their weapons are called. The problem with not actually playing as them, just getting killed by them. This type of energy is something that they have no guard against, as opposed to when they fought the army, where las guns were a really good way to stop them. It's literally the exact opposite dynamic as down on the planet.
Parts exploded in an electrical shower of gore.
This
could not go on. The 501st were bleeding troopers like crazy in these hard points, and they couldn't rely on Ahsoka or Anakin or any Jedi for that matter
are always good
to bail them out.
Especially if it cooks them a bit.
Anakin wasn't even on the ship. Him and the Bad Batch having taken the fight to the enemy destroyer with an eye for seizing the bridge.
Oh, the actual Imperial
Ahsoka,
ship.
on the other hand, was on board but not nearby. They had split up to cover more ground, hoping to confuse the enemy with the tactic. It evidently had not worked very well, at least not for him and his half of the men.
And this is one of the things I'm actually really glad Fan did include, because Imperium is usually fighting on so many fronts with an enemy that if they get on the ship, they're getting on the ship from a lot of places. Either just magic-y shenanigans with demons, technically with Eldar in the webway, which I'm going to call magic-y because I'm lazy. Or, well, gene stealers just popping up because, hey, that guy you took in wasn't actually human anymore. Or he's infected. Just all the reasons they get attacked on multiple fronts multiple times. It makes sense that just splitting in two isn't going to be that crazy. That said, in Star Wars, they don't usually have that. Specifically, you don't have one force breaking off unless there's two different objectives. And just doing it because trying to confuse someone is probably going to work. Because in general, they have different organization patterns. But it makes sense from the Star Wars side to do this. It's a good tactic, but they don't have the information. It's an out-of-context problem. And this is one of the quick ways to represent it. And we're not being told that it's an out-of-context problem. We're shown the result of how, see, you're splitting your force because you thought it would do one thing, but it didn't because of information you didn't have. This is how you resolve this type of issue really well. The reason I'm harping on this specifically is because not just in crossovers, which I'm a huge fan fiction addict of, but in fiction in general, when you're trying to show a lack of information on one party's side, you don't say that they don't have it. You can get away with that if it's an overview, or if you're in an info dump where you're looking at an after action in characterizations formats. But here, we're showing that the lack of information is having a detrimental effect on the plan. So we're seeing the out-of-context problem hitting someone in the face. This is how you show it. I just like this. It's actually the exact same thing we just saw before with the Imperial Army, but we're not quite seeing the advantage of it here where we saw it in the previous one, where now we're seeing the disadvantage, which is usually how an out-of-context problem is portrayed. So, yeah, this is good.
Ahsoka had taken Echo to seize the comm vaults, whereas he himself was tasked with taking the bridge, a mission which seemed more and more impossible by the second.
Bridge or the engine? It's always one of the two.
He simply could not see another way. They could retreat,
or
doing that
find a way
would
to
only
hack it and
this
have them
passageway
auto
to
self-destruct,
them,
but
a
details.
passage they had already bled
I think they could
hard
probably
to
do that,
take,
actually.
and which was not easily circumvented, and certainly not quickly avoided.
Love the art for this, though.
Backing out would be the same as admitting defeat. They needed to push through, and they needed to do it within the next few minutes, or the enemy would bunker down beyond their ability to breach. "We're gonna rush them," Rex said, feeling cold spikes trace
I hope they have
along his
explosives, or are
spine.
they trying to save
"Are
them?
you crazy?"
Yes.
asked one trooper nearby. "Captain, that heavy weapons fire will turn us into mulch. The back of the hallway is moments from blowing out into space," another.
The crazy part is the part that's blowing the mulch might not actually be the heavy weapons. I don't think it is, but since we're not hearing this from the Star Wars side right now, and I'm glad that we're not jumping around between the two different sides at the same time in the same battle, for all we know, that couldn't be a heavy weapon. It might just be their standard weapon that's heavier than what the Star Wars side is used to.
Argued. "And that's why we have to keep moving. The longer we stay pinned here, the worse our position will become."
Because they
the
can bring more
captain
people in,
said,
yeah.
waving
Smart move.
more of the men
But-
behind them up, who crawled forward at the gesture, using the cover or advancing up alcoves until the exploding
Problem is, he's aware
rain of
then that,
bullets
yeah, they're
became
about
too
to die.
dense. "Pass the shields up, now, troopers!" Rex ordered.
Shields?
They did, passing the large rectangular shields up and over themselves in a train until all the frontmost clones
Oh.
had access to one.
Neat.
"Blast it, Rex! These shields won't take even a single shot from what that heavy weapon is spitting. We're going to get cut to pieces," said Boomer, who was on his stomach under a blast
Throw
shield
them?
not far away.
Do they explode?
"You're going to have to trust me. Get your flashbangs and EMP grenades ready. No more arguing. I'll take point."
Okay, this is actually something I thought I knew, and I'm really just pulling a blank on this one. Is EMP a thing in the Imperium? Because I was going to say, obviously, yeah, it is, but I'm racking my brain, and I'm thinking I'm just pulling a blank on this. Because I know it's in Star Wars. They deal with droids all the time. EMP is just a thing they deal with. Hell, that's basically what the premise of an ion cannon is. Which is weird, considering the name and what it actually does, but at the function and versus the form and details. But I don't actually know. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some shielding that 40K can say they're using just because they probably use it without realizing what it is. And maybe the Mars does know and no one else does because Mars actually knows some of what they're doing sometimes. But I don't actually know if there's any dedicated EMP weapons. Usually if they're trying to destroy something, they're not trying to disable it with EMP. They're just trying to absolutely eradicate it with overwhelming firepower. Not like an EMP would work on, biological options like Tyranids. Maybe, considering how sometimes biology interacts with electronics. Yeah, it's kind of weird to get into that, but details. And definitely not demons. But considering they're fighting the mechanicus, is that going to be super effective, or are they going to be hardened against it? I don't know, and I think the best answer will be, Fan showing how effective these EMP are. I'm actually really curious to see how he interprets this.
"Toss, count, charge, and shoot," he ordered.
What's the
Rex
count?
swallowed hard, pushing down all thoughts of death, of the wounds he knew would kill him if any of those weapons struck him. The clones had never been as effective at fighting flesh and bone defense forces. The captain had always known that. But these...
Yeah, they get
these
plenty of experience
droid
later.
men were quickly proving more lethal in every way than the most dedicated rebel or dastardly insurgent. "Now!
Yeah, I'm
for
sure
the
you're used to the
Republic!"
rebels being
Rex
dastardly.
bellowed. The clones tossed their flashbangs, made specifically to interfere with optic sensors by using EM wave bursts, among other more conventional methods. They flashed
So
and
they're EM
screeched loudly, but Rex waited a
electronics.
moment, his instincts holding him back.
Yeah.
A stream of bolt rounds hammered into his cover and then off and away in the direction he had planned to jump towards. The droidman had anticipated that, but this time experience trumped equations, and he leapt out, rolling and dodging as bright blue
Okay, this is cool. This I really like because it's showing two things. One of which we're getting flat out. Rex saying it's his experience as someone who's just been in a lot of battles. And it's showing that well. It's showing his instinct. It's showing exactly what they should be doing with him. Making him sound and act like someone who is a verifiable badass who does know what they're doing. But also, it's showing the mechanical precision of the mechanicus. Yeah, still mechanicus at this point, not mechanicum, that's previous. Sorry, I've been doing a lot of 30K stuff, so I've been confusing in my head a bunch. But I like that because it shows how they think. They're really damn good at plotting out what's going to happen. So they saw what he's going to do. They guessed what the optimal answer is, what he was actually planning to do. And then because they weren't going the human element of intuition, they shot where it would go. And it was a perfectly executed idea, but intuition got away. I just like that because it shows how the different aspects are interacting. That's well done.
Shots fired from the bizarre, antique-looking rifles that the robed men were using.
Yeah, they very much are.
Hell,
some of these rifles might be older than the UP.
Constant as he came up to his feet smooth.
Considering this is from what I'm thinking the Indominus era, there is every possibility him calling these antiques is generous. Some of these might be older than the Republic. At least the Republic in its current iteration, post, I think, the Reformation, is that Rusan? Rusan Reformations? Yeah, I think it very well might be. I know there's thousands of years between them, but I think 10 or 11,000 years, depending on which timeline you may or may not be incorrectly using, because it's 40K, the timeline is always slightly incorrect, intentionally and annoyingly. Yeah, these guns could very well be older, depending if they're getting the good stuff or not, than the actual Republic. Maybe. I think the Republic has a shorter time span, where it's like 3,000 or 4,000 years is how long that went. Maybe it was 2,000. I don't actually remember. I think it's a long time period, but there's various stages, and there are very different beings between those stages. Huh.
Smoothly and jumped again, this time extending
also, wow,
both of
this
his
art is good. It looks like the custom stuff they've done before.
His first shot hit dead center, blowing away the face of the lumbering cyborg.
Oh.
It continued emptying its heavy weapon, even as it staggered, headless, before falling over, blowing itself to pieces as it fell forward onto its own barrel.
Damn.
The robed man, who was Rex's second target, ducked the shot, firing his own weapon, but shooting wide, evidently still blinded.
Okay, god damn. This is something I hope he has a print of, because this looks like something he commissioned here. Rex jumping around, you can see this guy blowing out the machinery and the viscera going all over. This guy ducking down, turning his head, which, oddly human reaction, because it won't matter if you get shot on the top of the head as opposed to the front of it. It just, this is such a cool image.
At least to a degree. The droid men opened fire, and Rex rolled as he hit the ground again, this time unable to preserve his momentum and falling heavily. He braced for the shot he knew was coming, but was shielded at the last second by Jesse, who blocked the shot with his blast shield. The bullet tinked loudly against the insulated metal, but otherwise seemed entirely negated.
Oh, was it a
Jesse
physical bullet?
extended a hand, which Rex took, wasting no time in getting back up. The 501st advanced up the hallway,
Oh no, I want to go back and see that. That is... Oh, that's... Oh, dude, you can see just how little of the flesh remains, because it's almost completely machinery on the inside. And for all I know, that could be the last remains of the flesh, or it could also just be a flesh covering left on top of it. I don't know. Oh, dude, that is appropriately disturbing. Oh, it does fit.
Advanced up the hallway, blast shields forming a triple-layered wall, one trooper holding up the shield while two others took shots from around it.
Dude.
The three robed droid men began to retreat, moving swiftly on double-jointed bionic legs, but taking fire as they did. Rex smiled, more than a little happy to see that, as effective as their weapons were against him and his men, the Republic was still not entirely without kick. Their blaster bolts, as slow as they were, and as ineffective against the Astartes as they had been, proved extremely lethal to all these droid men.
Yeah, okay, that's cool, but also slow? Oh, I get... See, I'm not used to the idea of anything like this being slow, because it's still really damn fast, but compared to bullets, which are, you don't see them, or some of the other forms out here, I guess it makes sense it would be slow. Mostly I thought that was just a holdover from the movies where they were slowed down so you could actually perceive the movement of the bolt, so people could tell what's happening in there. So even just seeing it at all for like a split second would be slow, because anything else you wouldn't see. It's almost hit scan at that point, except at extreme distances, which they're not at. It's kind of cool how they're actually making this in-universe slower. I've been told because they're particle accelerator weapons, actually, which... You'd think that'd be faster, but apparently it's significantly slower. I don't know if that's hard physics or the soft physics of basically space magic. I don't really care because it sounds cool, and that's really all I care about. Which would imply that I care still. Words, they are a thing.
The ionized blasts seemed to wreak havoc with their extensive augmentations, a thing Rex was all too eager to exploit as two of the
they're literally
retreating
interfering with
warriors
the systems
dropped,
like a debuff.
twitching and convulsing like roaches, the clones surrounding them and pumping them full of blue death. Still, while it was an advantage...
Oh, dude, that is actually a really cool interaction there. Van, way to go on thinking about that one. Just the entire idea that it's not so much that they're blowing them apart, is that this type of weapon is actually wreaking havoc on the internal structure that the mechanicus rely on. Oh, that's actually really neat, because that also negates one of their best advantages of just being metal and saying, haha, the flesh is weak. Where, I mean, I'm sure flesh would have issues with this too, but metal also has a weakness here. This is probably going to cause some, I mean, in the future, if this ever becomes an issue in more peaceful times, a religious schism in the sense that the mechanicus metal was weak specifically in this case. I don't think it'll ever come to that because they'd have to be at peace long enough for that to be something people think about, but I don't think that'll actually come up. But it'd be cool if it did.
It was a cold comfort when compared to the losses they were taking.
Yeah.
And then they turned the corner, the one leading towards the bridge turbo lift. Facing the clones were 3 lines of droid men. The first layer was composed of a shambling, bulky front line of cyborgs. Their arms had been replaced with massive pincers and sparking hammers, and their eyes seemed mindless and determined as death itself. Behind them, one row of robed, lithe droid men kneeled, weapons out in ordered rows. Rex saw some of the same rifles as the ones they had struggled with up till now, but mixed in with those were a plethora of other, varied and often glowing weapons. They were kneeling stock still as a second line of identical soldiers rested the barrels of their own weapons against the stiff soldiers of the first line. Keep going! Keep going! Close the distance! Rex yelled, charging behind Jesse's shield to the far left.
You got heavy weapons, fire 'em!
First charged and opened fire on the formation. The front line of droid men lurched into a mindless countercharge, and were nearly all wiped out by the volleys of fire which came out. One managed by sheer dumb luck to stumble around the bolts sent after it.
Oh, wow.
And reached the line of blast shields. With a single swing of its massive claw, it crushed the nearest shield and the trooper behind it before the cyborg was force-fed the barrel of a DC-15A, which put the flesh and metal amalgamation out of its misery. More shields moved up to cover the breach instantly.
Dude, okay, this is cool because the tactic being used is actually a really smart one. They're throwing what are essentially useless red shirts who can do a lot of damage if they don't die right in front of the more valuable-ish Skitarii, who can then just say, ha ha ha, blaster lines. So they're giving themselves time to prepare against the clones while also putting forward what is entirely possible completely expendable force. That's not a bad tactic, so I like the fans including this. It makes sense that this is how they would organize. It makes sense that they try to react that way, and even if the expendable front line is mostly expended, getting one in is bad because they are very strong. It's nice. It's really good writing.
But it did little good. Rex had been shooting past the front line all along, into the second and third line of the enemy, knowing it was with them that the real threat could be found.
Yep.
But they were fearless, even as he killed them, and when the final frontline cyborg had fallen, they opened fire. It was chaos and death in seconds, as the variety of different, obscene weapons dispensed hell into the first and second lines of the advancing troopers.
Also a horrible thing to bring into
Arc rifles struck the insulated shields like lightning bolts, deafening and burning the clones nearby, and through each gap that was created, more servitor bullets slung in, coated in blue as they struck more clones, stealing their potential energy before causing an electrical explosion at the impact site. But these were the lightest of the armaments. Bright, hellish phosphorus rounds, burning white-hot, began to clack and clink against the shields, burning their way through to the troopers behind them.
I'm not sure that would be how you describe that.
Oh, the screaming. There was suddenly so much screaming. The room became swelteringly hot, Rex feeling heat press into him despite his armor as thick bolts of plasma fired from several of the glowing weapons.
Yeah.
The globular volleys were easily enough to melt an ATTE down to its legs, and as it splashed into the rightmost ranks of the shield formation, its lethal potential was put on stark display as it liquefied the shields, troopers, and hallway present there.
Ooh.
Had they been close to the skin of the ship, they would have surely been vented into space.
Considering they're on the Star Wars ship, yeah, they probably would be. I think a 40k ship might have thick enough armor not to take that, but Star Wars ships just don't prioritize actual physical armor in ships nearly to the same extent as 40k does. Also because, Star Wars has a lot more shielding technology just generally used.
Rex found himself floundering as he...
I don't know, before anyone says it, void shields are a thing, but in general, there's just more standard level shields for more troopers. Well, not troopers, but for more ships than you would usually see for... Actually, it's kind of weird. There's a lot more shielding at the infantry level in 40k than the infantry level in Star Wars. But also, it seems like just smaller ships have shields in Star Wars, even if they're not void shields. Huh. Interesting distribution difference.
Felt the shield he was shooting around start to heat up as bright yellow projectiles began to rain down on it.
Honestly, I'm surprised the shield's still holding up.
What was the right answer? Retreat, charge, hold position?
Grenades?
Rex was not confident they would survive any of those outcomes. This is turning into Geonosis all over again! Jesse bellowed through the din of screams and weapons fire. No, Rex thought to himself as he and Jesse were suddenly tossed aside by the force of an explosion 5
You had a
meters
chance at
away.
Geonosis.
This is much worse than Geonosis, he thought numbly, pinned under the shield with Jesse as other bodies fell on top of and over them. After a second, he tried to shove himself out from under the pile, hearing Jesse groan next to him and thankful he was still alive. But he was helplessly pinned.
They're
All
trapped,
he could do
aren't
was
they?
manage to extract his arms and keep shooting with both pistols from his position on the ground. Luckily, his fellow clones did not pause to look to him for further orders. He had already given them orders. Howling in pain as they stepped through molten metal and the slimy remains of their brothers, the clones kept up the charge.
Yeah, 40k weapons are a
They
bitch,
tossed
man.
flashbangs and EMP grenades to try to disrupt the consistent, accurate fire which was devastating their advance. But the droidmen shot these down mid-flight, now all too aware of their efficacy, eye lenses shuttering closed.
And they're taking out the explosive boom boom sticks. I'd really just call that explosive boom boom stick. Wow. Sorry, I am judging myself for that one, and not well. Oh, that is embarrassing even to me.
Open in the moments when the flashbangs went off. The 501st weren't making any headway. Rex, are you all right?
Any chance someone has a heavy weapon like a grenade launcher or a rocket?
And begin hauling him up. It was Korik, and Rex barely managed to pull the trooper down beside him in time to avoid a crackling spear of electrical death.
Dude.
I'm fine, Korik. Keep your head down, Rex ordered, shooting 2 droidmen in the face, stopping them from coating him and Korik in explosive bullets. Blast it! I'd strangle a Jedi for a few blaze troopers right about now. Korik complained, shielding himself behind a half-melted blast shield that lay nearby, jamming his rifle through the damaged gap and firing as he spoke. He, Rex, and many other dying and fighting clones shot volleys, both precise and scattered, back at the droidmen. Those struck would either weather the blow, suffering from twitches, spasms, but no obvious pain, or they would drop, falling into violent, rending contortions. After falling, they would be replaced, those in the second row kneeling to take the positions of the first, while a third row of obscured forces stepped in from behind to replace those of the second row. This was a meat grinder for both sides, given how effective their weapons were on the strange biology of the droidmen, but it was far, far worse for the 501st. I'd strangle a few blaze troopers for a Jedi right about now, was Rex's answer to Korik. And, like a prayer, his answer was... answered.
What?
From above and behind the 2 lines of droidmen, 2 familiar bars of blue light penetrated from the floor above them. They spun, creating a perfect circle of rent metal, then withdrew. The cork of Durasteel was pushed down into the center of the 2 lines of robed droidmen, crushing several beneath it before tens of EMP grenades rained down from the hole in the ceiling.
Oh, goddamn, Ahsoka. Big damn hero moment and all the explosives. Heck yeah.
The droid men reacted with little confusion and near instantaneous motion, starting to retreat, but they were still not quick enough, their forward lines screeching out in mechanical pain as they were enveloped in the expanding globes of electromagnetic waves. Most of them had been proofed against conventional EMP and similar radiation, but the exotic technologies of the clones handedly overcame these standard defenses.
I'm assuming the exotic part is because it's literally a different universe's technology enabling the EMP effect, but how different can you make that? I mean, I don't really care. This is more just an actual tech thing on my end. Not the sci-fi tech, but in actual hard physics. If anyone here is actually knowing anything about this, let me know, because I'm actually curious. Are there various ways to achieve this? Because the one I know is an EMP effect is the outcome, not the actual name, and it doesn't really change how you do it. Oddly enough, one of the ways to do it would be literally to send a nuke up and drop it on someone and have the nuke go off high enough where the bomb blast itself isn't the main damage. It's the radiation, or not the radiation. I'll talk about the radiation later, but the actual EMP effect from that explosion itself, which of course would be the main focus if it wasn't for the entire fact that you're using a nuke to do it in actual practical terms. But, sorry, I'm just kind of thrown off because exotic clone EMP. One, they do have the technology to shield against EMP. Neat. So that gets rid of that question. Two, and the one I've already asked, exotic clone tech. I'm assuming it's just a universal difference, but maybe I'm missing something.
The clones gave a cheer and charged, and this time, when Kolick went to help Rex up, he let him. Rex took a moment to make sure a medic got to the still unconscious Jesse before checking himself for wounds and joining the rush of the counter-assault. Ahsoka dropped from the ceiling as soon as the grenades had detonated, scything her way into the retreating droid men with both sabers. Her half of the 501st began to rappel and drop down from the hole after her, opening fire all the while. With cries of, "For the Commander!" and "For the Republic!" The 501st managed to push the enemy forces all the way back to the turbo lift that led up to the final approach into the bridge. The lift had been shut down, but they had Echo working on it and expected to have it back online in minutes. Rex sighed and leaned against the wall, taking off his helmet and wiping at the heavy sweat which coated his brow. The ship air was now cool against his scalp, whereas before it had been like an oven. He sighed, taking his rest while he had the chance. "Well, you don't seem too broken up about the stall." Rex opened his eyes and saw Ahsoka approaching, a cautious smile lighting her face. He smiled back, not denying it. "Truth be told, Commander, I think we need the rest. I've never been part of a boarding action as frantic as this. I keep thinking we should have come more prepared, but prepared with what? I couldn't very well let the men..."
Rocket launchers. I'm not even joking. They're the answer to everything. And I'm not just saying this because I'm the kind of idiot who would bring an entire army of grunt-sized units that have nothing but rocket launchers and a giant distraction card effects in front to make people stop shooting the guys with the actual rocket launchers. But I'm just saying, if you have enough long-range fire that is so far back because of the extreme range that they can just put in a good bit of damage constantly without getting shot back because, again, the range, it's a really nice strategy. Granted, it doesn't work in a ship where it's low range, but still, explosives are a thing that I really love. Honestly, if you don't have enough things exploding, you just aren't doing it right. Is this my bias towards explosives in general? Yeah. Would it be helpful? I don't know, but also it just involve more explosions, so I kind of be okay with that.
Bring PLXs into a boarding action, right?
What's a PLX?
Ahsoka crossed her arms and nodded. "I know what you mean. I've had to use every trick in my book to get us out this far, and we are still losing more men than is acceptable. They fight almost like droids, but competently," he finished for her, and she nodded again.
And this is one of the things I really want to see done. Not so much the entire idea about how droids fight incompetent, is how they describe the Skitarii, which is basically accurate. I just want someone to unscrew over the droid armies, because they're... I've always seen a lot of people talk about how they're so horrible, but at the same time, if someone just gave them better programming, they could be lethal. And they're basically not, because Palpatine doesn't want an unbeatable army. He wants an army that can hold things out until he can just gain power in such a way that it makes him look legitimate despite not being. Because it's his own game he's playing. Honestly, though, if he went full on with the droids and really unshackle them, he very well probably could just take over, flat out. But he doesn't want to do it that way. Details.
How were the comm vaults? Were you and Echo able to patch into the ship from there? He asked. She shook her head. The comm vaults are completely stripped clean.
What?
Most of the physical machinery is gone, and
yeah,
what's left
Star
has
Wars
been
ship.
wiped and nearly completely disconnected from the ship. They didn't even bother to defend them, at least not any more fiercely than any other part of the ship. It looks like you ended up getting the worst of it in that regard. The former Padawan said,
what were they heading
rubbing her
towards?
arm and looking away, ashamed to have left her friend in such a desperate situation.
I know they split
Rex
up, and I thought
laughed, causing Ahsoka to look
they were
up.
going to the bridge, but I
If
don't
that's the
think they went
case,
that way.
then I'm glad, he said, straightening up off the wall. She looked at the captain quizzically. Why's that? She asked. A sudden loud beep caught all of their attention, both Rex and Ahsoka and the many, many clones around them. Echo stood up and away from the input slot he had been using, looking up at the lift as the active light flicked on.
Someone coming down?
Okay, that should do it, he called.
Oh, he got it working.
Rex grinned and put on his helmet, looking at Ahsoka. I was honestly afraid they would have their own version of a Jedi, that you would be the one dealing with that without me.
God damn it, Rex. I'm not even going to say you jinxed it. You didn't jinx it. You cursed them flat out. Oh. Is this where the librarian is coming from? Just random librarian insert right here? Oh, I don't...
If this is all they have, then we can still take them down, he said, hefting his two blaster pistols. Ahsoka nodded, but then frowned, her eyes widening in a look Rex had seen too many times before. Jedi were clairvoyant. They got these feelings.
The feeling of,
bad
God
feeling?
damn it, Rex.
He asked. She activated her lightsabers in response as the lift doors opened. Rex and his troopers
didn't
took up
get it
positions,
working.
but his heart still sank when he saw
It was
what
allowed
had come
to work.
for them. The lift was packed with more of the robed droid men, the confines bristling with the nozzles, dishes, and barrels of their assorted weapons.
Yep.
But there, in the center of it all, holding some bizarre, cog-themed staff, which seemed to spark with power,
Okay, not the librarian.
stood a robed, blue-skinned figure.
Oh, the
He
electro
stepped
priest.
forward, stave in hand, his eyes wrapped and hidden behind black bandages. Tattoos of silver, which seemed to be in the likeness of circuitry, covered
Might
every
actually be functional
inch of
too,
his
for all I know.
skin they could see, which increased drastically as he tossed aside his robe, leaving himself bare-chested before them and revealing the encompassing extent of his markings.
Do not fear and do not despair.
He
fuck?
called out to them.
I am a holy priest of the motive force, and I have come to tell you that even though you must now fall before our sacred forms, I shall gather and preserve your potential energy. Nothing shall be wasted.
The odd
I was going to say this is so weird, but considering the Mechanicus is technically a religious order completely and not a tech-based order, it's both, or not just a tech-based order. I was going to say it's weird that no one has been preachy, but it's also odd that no one's been preachy, and it is weird that no one's been preachy, and it's just... Is this a thing that just happens in 40K that I've just completely been unaware of? And the thing is, I can't say it's not. Are they just randomly going to go and preach motive force theism? God Emperorism, whatever, take your pick. All hail the Omnisci, but very chatty for someone from the Mechanicus. It's, yeah, I guess they're going full Jehovah's Witness on it. You're going to take it whether you like it or not.
priest bellowed, sparks raining from his skin.
And know that to die before the servants of the Omnissiah is a blessing within itself.
And with that, the man smacked his staff against the floor. and all the lights within the corridor died in an instant. And
Because he
as the
blew 'em
lights
out.
died, the screaming began again.
Dude. It's going to cut there, isn't it? Ooh, what music is that in the background? Okay, so I'm just glad it wasn't actually Librarian that ended up dropping in, because I was thinking, you know what? Ahsoka versus a Librarian, my money is on either a very hard battle where Ahsoka gets really wounded because plot armor she doesn't die, or we see him name character death, which would suck because I don't want Ahsoka to die this early. She's a really fun character. She really grew on me, considering initially I thought she was annoying, and over time she just became one of my favorites. Was not expecting that. It was kind of nice it happened. But more importantly, I just love that Rex jinxed it in a very specific way. Really wish I thought you'd be fighting a Jedi equivalent among them. And then they literally bring out a warrior priest. And considering how a lot of Jedi are considered a religious order of warriors, that actually is perfectly fitting that it's a religious warrior of orders. And he jinxed it so hard. And I love that he did it. It's a complete nod to the fan fiction nature of this, just fiction in general nature of this. But it's such a fun one. And I know it's an overdone trope. It's like, I'm going to say something and jinx it, and then it happens. Because it works as both a bit of foreshadowing and a bit of, why'd you say that? But it gets that emotion across, so it doesn't just come out of left field. So you just give that little bit of leeway to the audience so they're expecting it. So it doesn't surprise them when, oh, hey, another enemy dropped in. It'd be a good thing if an enemy didn't drop in right now to get you more okay with the thought. So it's a bit of, how to say it, I forgot the word. Verisimilitude, that is it. Yeah, it's a bit of verisimilitude, making you believe more in the universe because they're lampshading things. But I'm glad he did it. Basically, that's what I'm saying. I like that this happened. I like that he lampshaded. I like that the verisimilitude was built up. I like how this was done. This was well written and did a lot of techniques that were good. Also, he stuck to a very few people in their heads without jumping around a ton, which is more just a personal thing because I just don't like that style. Some people love it. There's ways to get around it. I'm just not a fan personally. That said, overall, the writing's good, and he's doing a lot of really good techniques that show how things work. And it's just well done. Basically, what I'm saying is, I really like this episode. And I've been told this is a really big central part of the story. Maybe not for multiple episodes, but it sounds like multiple episodes because it's definitely more than this one. But a significant chunk of episodes compared to, like, here's the thing, it's in one episode and they move on. Kind of like how that initial space battle was a significant chunk of episodes and all the variations around that. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this shakes out. This is just well done, and I love it. It's making me want to play both 40K and Star Wars now. Unfortunately, that would involve downloading Battlefront 2 again on the PS. And I'm not doing that. No. Damn you, a fan, for making me want to do that. But yeah. Thanks for everyone watching. You guys know the deal, though. Link below, original video. Hit it up. Are you done? Tell me what I missed. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.